Part of me needed to get away from the Mormon church. I'm a control freak. I worked in prisons. The fashion community here has really embraced me.
Fashion was your direction in life?
I sort of took influence from my grandmother's style. I bought a sewing machine, just made a couple of muck-around dresses. I know how to put things together, and then I know how to take them to the next level. As a designer, I just make things that I like. As Australians, we are getting more of our own identity. Australia's waking up to gay rights.
I'm Elena Reddy, and welcome to Foreign Influence. Qualities in the business person.
Like music where I'll tell a story. Put it there, give it
What's happening?
Your life can be better.
Happiness is about having a good time, it's about joy.
The girl will go along a faith show.
And the challenge is... Welcome to Foreign Influence. Fashion is a form of self-expression. Today we're going to talk to fashion designer Paul McCann about why fashion matters. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today. So excited to finally meet you.
Such an honor to meet you, especially I have had the privilege to wear your gowns a few times. Paul, you have such an amazingly rich cultural heritage. Please tell us what your roots are.
Yeah, luckily I'm fortunate to know my bloodline. So I identify as Eurasian Aboriginal, which consists of Aboriginal, Chinese, Irish, Danish, Russian, Lithuanian with Jewish blood, and a bit of British.
This is incredible.
A bit we call, in Australia, pretty much a mix of this and that and everything, but most people in Australia are these days, so we're pretty mixed up.
Absolutely, very multicultural
Very multicultural.
Please tell us about your growing up.
Well, I am originally from the Northern Territory, grew up in Darwin, and I'm also a traditional landowner. My bloodline is Marathiel, which I get from my father's side, the Marathiel bloodline. So I grew up on our traditional land, which I'm very fortunate that we own, because a lot of Indigenous people don't have their traditional lands that they are custodians over. So very lucky to have grown up there and have that connection to my country, which is pretty much what your design is today that you're wearing, and also what's on mine.
Aboriginal paintings, are they a way of storytelling?
Each tribe has different designs that helps differentiate what their practices and their dreamings are, which is part of like almost an Indigenous religion. So this actually, the design is not traditional to my Marathiel bloodline, but I came up with this pattern from a dream over 15 years ago. And so you've got all the circles representing my ancestors, that eternal circle, and all the different lines coming off that is the different paths and directions we take in life, on country and within Australia as a whole. So I call it my connection to country design.
Well, extremely unique.
Thank you, yeah, certainly is, especially unique to me.
The place where you grew up, was it a big community or was it very remote?
Yeah, it's very remote. It's all dirt roads to be able to get out there. Fortunately enough, we have an airstrip as well, so when the wet seasons come, you can't drive, you will get bogged, and we've been bogged many a times in the dirt. We'd have to charter planes in and out to fly back into Darwin to get supplies and so forth. The size of my country is pretty much the size of Point Cook to Geelong, so it's quite a big chunk of land. That's where custodians and owners over.
What do you remember about nature when, as a little boy?
Always playing in it. I had one of the biggest backyards you could ever believe. Different billabongs. We couldn't swim in them because of the crocodiles.
Crocodiles, yes.
Yeah, so it was a huge big tease. Having billabongs, but you can't really swim in them because you're not sure what's lurking in the water. So as children, we always had to stay away from them, but we could fish in them and catch some freshwater fish. And we were always outside, me and my cousins and my brothers and sisters. So always playing and making things pretty much out of nothing and out of nature all the time.
What was the schooling like?
Schooling, it was very interesting. My mum, Sammy, was my school teacher, but I actually grew up doing what we call Catherine School of the Air. So that's literally tuning into a radio over and out a couple of times a week. They would send us out sort of module booklets to be able to work from. Did I really work for them? Not really. I was always more of a creative child than like an academic, I'd say.
When COVID rolled in, you were totally prepared.
Yep, totally prepared.
Distance education and distance everything.
Exactly.
Yes.
I sort of miss those days sometimes, like just the quietness of the world, when COVID hit. But yeah, it was very isolating, especially in Melbourne. It was pretty much, being in a prison in itself after working in prisons for 10 years as well. So it was a very interesting experience. But luckily I did have art and a couple of cats.
Point did you start understanding that fashion was your direction in life?
After moving back into town, into Darwin, after living on country, I went to high school in Darwin, and then I left high school in year 11, and then I actually went to university, Charles Darwin University, to study basically how to sew. So I took a fashion design course for about 2.5 years. I didn't quite complete it, but I just sort of used them to be able to...
You had a very good introduction.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of designers today will just provide someone else with a sketch and have them, make it for them. I know how to put things together, and then I know how to take them to the next level by either hand painting like the garments or embellishing them. It's good to have the basic skills of knowing how to sew. The ball gowns and things that I make, you need a bit more skill to be able to pull those off, and patience, a lot of patience.
How did that passion for fashion developed in you? Did you have some muses, someone you found inspiring?
Well, look, I grew up basically wearing things from a second-hand shop pretty much my whole life, so I had an appreciation for old clothing, but also very fortunate enough that on my mother's side we had beautiful photos of my grandmother in the 1940s and 50s, and she just looked so on point. Darwin's not really known for fashion and put together looks really. It's a bit rough up there, a bit, I don't want to say the word bogan, but it's pretty much thongs and anything breathable.
Relaxed and casual.
Very, very, very laid back. So yeah, in terms of style, I sort of took influence from my grandmother's style and how put together they were in those days, and I ran with that. And so my silhouettes and the shapes that I create, they're a bit old school, but it draws a lot of attention, drama. There's a lot of drama in those sorts of silhouettes.
We're filming this interview at the Victorian Pride Centre. I was just wondering, when you were growing up, you must have had a lot of weight on your shoulders. How does that make you feel today, being out in the open, Victorian Pride Centre, where a lot of people can come and express themselves openly?
Definitely. St Kilda's is a very special place, especially for the gay community, so it's beautiful to be able to have a space like this created. I think it's only been around for 4 or 5 years. Good meeting space, place for us to be able to congregate, and it's good to see that Australia's waking up to gay rights, and I think they need to do a bit better when it comes to First Nation rights, but we'll hopefully get there soon as well, with those matters as well.
When we talked on the phone for the first time, I told you that you had a very musical voice, and I asked you if by any chance you are a singer.
I wish, I was a singer, but I pretty much grew up a Mormon as well. Well, I joined when I was 14, so served a full-time mission as well in Western Australia.
Oh, wow.
I've been to Utah, visited all their temples and so forth. Church choir was actually a huge part of my life, 2 days a week, so a couple of solos there as well, but I've never really pursued music as taking it serious. It's just nice to be able to maybe put a tune together and be able to sing something decent.
Tell me about you working in prisons, in correction facilities.
Yeah, I worked in prisons for around 10 years. I first started off as an Indigenous prison officer, then went into the role of an Indigenous wellbeing officer, and then I pretty much for the last 6.5 years of that, I worked as a arts officer in the prison system, so teaching Victorian inmates Indigenous art.
So is it like art therapy?
Art therapy, but it's also a lot of the community down here are very disconnected to actually knowing what their traditional style is. So like I was saying, there's different styles for different tribes. So what we find down here is because of the disconnection to culture, they're painting a lot of northern designs and practices, and they're trying to pull that off as their traditional practice, but it's not. Our styles are completely different. And so I could be able to tell how disconnected you are from your culture by what you're painting. So it wasn't about correcting you, it was about saying, hey, this is actually traditionally what you mob do, so how about we pursue this avenue? And some were very successful in it. We would sell a lot of their art as well for non-for-profit, and they'd get all the funds back to help hopefully support them once they got out of prison to be able to do the right thing, have a bit of money to not make bad choices. But sometimes you still make those bad choices and you end up in the system again, because it's a hard revolving door to get out of once you enter the prison system.
Well, they were very lucky to have you and to have your skill set.
Very
and
stressful job.
I can
taking
imagine.
On, that sort of role in that sort of setting. So pretty much, when I started designing clothing, I'm in my 4th year, got back into sewing, left my day job because I couldn't do them both anymore. It was just way too stressful, and this is very time consuming to be able to do. Luckily I've survived for the past 4 years. It's a very interesting industry to be in for sure.
What was the defining moment when you thought, that's it, now I am going into fashion?
Pretty much coming out of COVID, I was still doing paintings on canvases, but the galleries and the art world weren't really interested in my painting on canvas. So I bought a sewing machine, just made a couple of what I call muck around dresses, just to make something and paint them. And then next minute, invited to attend Australia Fashion Week. Was that 2021 or 2022, just after COVID? We sort of came out of all the lockdowns.
Yeah.
My gumnut ball gown was the hugest sensation, and it really led me down to then calling myself a fashion designer. Yeah.
Bravo! Bravo!
I was not expecting it. It just happened, and I've pretty much run with it since. So.
What was that feeling like?
A huge sense of pride. I couldn't believe how well it was received. Kind of took me off guard a little bit, but then I knew, okay, I'm onto something. People are actually recognizing my own style and my practice a bit more. So it's been an interesting past 4 years to be able to still pursue and do multiple runways a year, still be invited back to do the runways.
How many runways have you done so far?
So in about my 4 years, I've probably done around 12 or just over 12 runways within Melbourne and some in Sydney, even a couple in Brisbane as well.
That's extraordinary, because that means it's 12 collections you had to put together. In a collection, just for people who don't know, how many pieces do you need?
They want to see a minimum of 8 looks, but maximum of 10 looks in a collection for the festivals and the fashion weeks. When you're doing your own solo show though, that can consist of almost 30 to 40 looks, but I'm yet to do that sort of scenario because it's very expensive to do your own runway show. We're talking over $100,000 to be able to pull off your own runway show, so I've stayed away.
and it's enormous job. So how do you pick the models? What is the process? Tell us. How does it work?
When you're invited to a fashion week or festival, they sort of will put you into a category of what they best feel suits your sort of practice. I used to actually only be involved in a lot of the Indigenous runways. I was always sort of put in that box. But now, probably for the last 2 years, I've been taken out of that box and actually been put into the category of pretty much the designers of today and where I'm at, and we're on the same level. So it's really actually refreshing to be out of just ticking the box, put them in the Indigenous runway section. I'm pretty much not the same sort of style and designer as the rest of them who make pretty much day wear, and I'm more evening wear. You'll be given a category, and then they will actually have a stylist on side which will do the whole styling situation, the hair, the makeup, and he actually will select the models. But I always asked, I would like to see First Nation people, even if it's not just my people. I want to see other people of colour and of other ethnicities in my clothing, so they respect that, and they actually will do that, and they also will pick the music as well.
We met you through this wonderful stylist that we have been working sometimes together with Tamara from Tito Styling.
Yes, she's
and she was so mesmerized by your talent, and she told us about you, and the last interview we filmed was we were wearing your beautiful gowns. Paul, how would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? I'm someone that does love a coffee in the morning and one of a kind in a way. I'm a big believer in the zodiac and the star signs, even though that might go against my culture a little bit. But I believe in energies and vibes from people. And
So you're very spiritual.
Yeah, pretty good intuition as well. Yeah, I can read the energy of a room. That's the sort of person I am.
What makes you unique?
I think definitely my fashion sense and my style. So, I can definitely walk into a room and heads will turn. It's not just me, it's the clothing that I wear that does that. Plus, people don't quite know what my ethnicity is as well. It's a guessing game for a lot of people. So, it's pretty interesting.
Paul, when you think of Australian fashion industry, what is your analysis of the evolution of it?
I feel like as Australians, we are getting more of our own identity. Because, a lot of the time, even in the earlier days, we were basing a lot of things of what was happening in Europe. The old saying is, you look to Paris and what they're doing, because they're really amazing couturiers of how and what they achieved. A lot of us were looking to them for the style, but I feel like today we've got our own individual styles, and styles are changing so rapidly as well. I do feel like there hasn't been, since Dior, you'd have a style for almost 10 years, but it's like we're changing every year and it's got to be a bit different. But I don't really play into that as a designer. I just make things that I like, and I find that a lot of designers have their own niche and their own sort of look and style where they don't play to the masses, but some do play to the masses and try to change every year, where I just make what I like. And if I don't like what I make, then it's going to be obvious.
Would you describe yourself as an introvert or an extrovert?
Very interesting question. I love being around people, but I sometimes will get drained. So I love sort of being on my own and just re-energizing, I suppose. I love my own time, my own space, yeah. Like even with being a designer, I'm a control freak slightly, so I don't give off any of my work. Like I want to see it all the way through pretty much. So it's pretty sort of interesting to be introverted but extroverted. It's this balancing act of being a Libra, honestly.
That's right.
You need your fun time and definitely your quiet time, I find.
You're about to go to Sydney Fashion Festival for your collection. What was your inspiration?
This year I was actually invited by Jordan Gogos, one of my dear, also Libra brother friends.
By the way, we're Libras,
We're both
and we
Libras.
worked it out. We have birthday on the same
day.
day.
I'm 1 year older, so that's so crazy. But
So kind.
I just get it. Like, that's why you're so balanced and beautiful and put together, like myself. So this actual collab with Jordan, he's actually invited a couple of iconic other designers from Australia to also be in his show. It's a solo show, like I'm saying, so he's got 40 looks. And so I pretty much painted a whole bunch of velvet fabric. I shipped it off to him. I painted it within 2 days, about 6 meters. And
Wow.
so I was like, you make what you want of it. And then the plan was to send it back to me, and then I'd do my extra thing to it. But once I saw the look he put together, I was like, it's so beautiful. I just can't add anything to it. Like, it just detracts. So. And he was in agreement, luckily. I think he wanted me to say that. It's going to be a silhouette and shape that I haven't done before. It's been at least 2 years since I've been involved with Australia Fashion Week, so yeah, Melbourne loves me a bit more, I think.
What is your favourite city? So you're from Darwin, you moved to Melbourne. Why Melbourne?
Oh, well, I had a friend that actually said to me when she moved down, "Oh, Paul, since I moved to Melbourne, something amazing has happened to me every day." So I was like, whoa, that's pretty impressive. Part of me needed to get away from the Mormon church as well. And like, I'm a gay man now. I was always gay, but like, I sort of had to keep that on the down low because you'd get excommunicated. So in a way, I was looking to get out of religion by moving away from Darwin because it's so small and everyone knows your business. And I'm pretty much related to half of Darwin anyway, with a big family. It was a good excuse to sort of break away and do something different and move down here with her. I've been down here for at least 13 years, I think, and I love it. But I've also lived in Sydney as well. It's interesting. They got a beautiful city. It's not. I don't like the layout. Like Melbourne, everything is so sort of close together. It just makes a bit more sense. And we're a bit more stylish down here, I feel. So,
Well, we are the fashion capital.
Exactly,
yes,
exactly.
of Australia.
So the fashion community here has really embraced me. Where like they invite me every year to their 2 major shows a year, being Fashion Week and the Fashion Festival. So they're a great supporter of my practice.
Paul, what is the biggest compliment you have ever received?
I'd probably have to answer that in 3 parts. Being called magical, iconic, but also with my art practice, Australia Fashion Royalty. They're pretty huge compliments.
Australian fashion royalty.
Yeah.
Yes, I
That's
would
huge.
vote for that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's a huge honour to be called that.
Paul, what is the space like that you work in?
Yeah, so I don't have a said studio, so I pretty much work from home. I have a kitchen island that I will lay the fabric out on, and that's where I do all my hand painting. And then I have like a round dining table. There's good energy around round sort of tables and spaces.
Okay.
So I actually...
Well, yes, the circles,
all
the circles,
and
yes.
that, yeah, the eternity
Yes.
and the energy, yeah. That's where I do a lot of my sewing. It's just from my kitchen dining table and the island pretty much, so.
Very practical.
Very practical. I just get to roll out of bed. I don't have to, get in traffic and drive to a space. My art space does become a little bit hectic and messy, and as a Libra, like, you can't live with too much junk around you, so it's this constant battle of, if someone comes over, especially, I'm like rushing mad to make sure everything's on point. So yeah, it's an interesting space to work out of, but it's less taxing on my energy and soul as well to be able to work from home.
Paul, what was the most memorable moment in your fashion career?
Definitely the gum nut ball gown. It was my signature dress that, like I said, Australia just went wild for. They weren't expecting it. They weren't expecting my people to be able to even pull off a look like that. That's probably my most memorable moment, and that's made me the designer that people know my art practice for today. So I'm grateful for that dress.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years, hopefully married up. Libra without love is, we're not exactly...
Fish without water.
Exactly. I'd like to settle down with someone, I feel like. to maybe also have a little bit of a ready-to-wear situation where people can access my clothing a bit more. But I'm not ever going to be able to, like, I won't lose my one-off wearable art practice because it's what makes me me.
Paul, thank you so much for sharing your story with our audience and for trusting us. May your fashion roll out throughout the world, throughout this planet. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me, and I've just loved supporting your work, so continue on and keep changing the narrative. Love you.